Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you back again this week for another great podcast. I'm telling you, we are working on this third quarter. We've kind of continued the process through the second quarter of what I'm terming the 6P business owner formula. And I've been sharing this with you listeners because I think this is key for you to really be successful in your business. And it's about the people, it's about promotion, it's about pricing, it's about productivity, profit, and processes. And I'm trying to bring you guests that will really help you in those 6 key areas because those really incorporate your whole business that's available. And today, I think I found that guest again for you. And today's Mark is with us, but I'm going to ask Mark first to share with us, what problem will you solve for our listeners?
This is really going to be a focus on people. It's about connecting us as people. And the way that I'm going to introduce you to doing that, and doing it maybe better or more than you've been doing it, is through storytelling. We connect as a species through storytelling. So I want to talk about how do stories connect us as human beings to help you achieve your business results.
Well, I'm excited already for this conversation. So today we've got with us Mark Carpenter. He's a serial storyteller. He teaches people how to lead intentionality by telling stories that teach, lead, sell, and even inspire. He is the co-creator of the best-selling book and workshop, Master Storytelling: How to Turn Your Experiences into Stories That Teach, Lead, and Inspire. Mark, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Gary. Really excited to be here with you and your audience.
Well, I love talking about stories, and sometimes as business leaders, they don't understand the value of that because a lot of us are very much get down to the brass tacks and, tell them what you need. But especially when you're dealing with people, it doesn't matter internally or externally in your company, you have that challenge. So let's start from really that basis. How can storytelling really make me a better business leader and for our entrepreneurs and business owners?
Well, and what you said there, Gary, is the key to it. It's we're always dealing with people. Whatever we're doing in whatever aspect, we are dealing with people. Now, I'm not saying that the numbers, the information, the statistics about your business, the features and benefits of your products, we're not saying those are unimportant, but supplement that information with a story and you connect to people in real powerful ways. You think about this. I heard somebody say this a long time ago, that we buy from people that we know, trust, and like. Mm. Well, how are you going to get people to know, trust, and like you? Is it going to be by sharing information? Sometimes we think it is. It's that if I can show that I'm measurably better in this statistical category, that's going to stand out to people. But the thing that really connects you with them as people is having that common ground that comes in through stories. Stories is how we make sense of the world. If you think back evolutionarily, this is how we originally communicated, was through story. Long before we had written communication, we communicated information with each other through story. This is how you could tell if someone is a friend or a foe, were how you talked to each other and how you related to each other and what common experiences you had. So the more that you can create that common bond with the people that you work with, the stronger your relationship with them is going to be, and the more likely they are to work with you.
Yeah, I think that becomes a critical component. And really, like we said, internally as well as externally, with our customers, but also with our team. And I kind of want to go that way. You and I had a little side conversation before we got started. And I was telling you, recently I had an business owner that actually hired someone. It was a referral that I didn't know her well, but I knew she'd be a good candidate. And she sent me her resume and I shared it with a group of individuals that I work with. And one gentleman really connected with her because he, number one, followed up right away. But then when he met with them, he not only found out what her story was, and why she was moving back and all those components and why she wanted to come back to the area. But he also connected his company through story. And I think this becomes one of the keys sometimes business owners forget. And we're going to go to the internal side here. Why it's so important to tell our story, because as new people come on, it's important. But also when we're trying to grow a company, what do people buy into? They buy into that vision and that story that that business owner entrepreneur has. So can you share with me kind of why that storytelling you think matters for business owners and entrepreneurs in cases like that?
Well, there's a lot of research even that backs this up. Well, one of my favorite research studies around storytelling is the one where they got three groups together and they shared some information with one group, just gave them the information verbally. The second group, they gave them the information and they showed it to them in charts and graphs as well. And the third group, they gave them the information, but they did it in the context of a story. And then they came back 2 weeks later with these people and they tried to determine how much did they remember and how accurately they remembered it and what they thought about the information. Well, the first two groups that just got the information or even got it with charts and graphs, they remembered about the same amount and with about the same accuracy. The third group remembered more of the information, remembered it more accurately, and the one that was really telling to me is they found the information more credible. And you know, as business leaders, back to what you were saying earlier, Gary, that we think we have to share this information. This is going to increase my credibility. But this research actually shows that stories are going to increase your credibility with people. And so that's critically important. Think about the context that you just gave about the job interview. If I'm coming to you and interviewing for a job and you tell me what your company does, that's great. I understand that. But if you tell me a story of the impact your company is making, well, that hits me in a different way. And it might put me in a position where it's like, ooh, I want to be part of that impact. I want to be part of that. If you're just giving me information, there's not a lot of passion behind that. And so it doesn't connect with me in the same way. Now, I'd say that the flip side is true as well, that if I'm interviewing for the job and I really want you to hire me, I want to tell the story about why I am going to be a good fit for your organization. I want to share with you an experience that I had that says, here's what shows that my strength is teamwork and team commitment. I mean, if I just tell you, yeah, I'm really big on teamwork. Well, okay, that's a bit of information, but you don't know what that means to me. But if I could put it in the context of a time that I stepped into a team project and I helped others out when they were struggling, now you're going to see me in a little different way than if I just say, yeah, I'm a good team player.
Yes, that is so true. And one thing that just came to my head thinking about what if employees with research studies they're doing and Gallup with their engagement surveys, what are they doing all the time? People want to have a purpose and a passion behind what they're doing. And sometimes people think what they do doesn't matter, but them making those widgets or whatever it is in your business, it does matter because you're serving a clientele. And I just thought, well, wow, what a way to connect that, because you're connecting them. I know now why she was so excited, because I told you I got a text from her and she was excited that she's going to work for them because she thinks it's going to be a really neat place to work. But she liked what she heard because I know the gentleman that did it, he's quite the storyteller and his company is kind of interesting in what he does there. Now let's take it the other factor. And I know some of them same things apply in externally. But when we're selling, and you even talk about that some in your book and stuff, why is it so important in that area of selling within our businesses to understand that storytelling really can help us increase our sales?
Again, it goes back to connecting with people. This is how we connect as human beings. And think about what your competitors are probably giving. They're probably giving them their features and benefits and why they think that they're the best and the big pitch on there. But if I can tell the story that says, here's how somebody we've worked with who is similar to you made an important transformation to that in their work, in their business, because they worked with us. And if they can see that vision of the transformation that's going to come by working with me, they're much more likely to remember me as they're making the consideration and to come back and buy from me. The other part is storytelling is great to use with objections that you get. We all know the common objections that you get from your customers, and they're different in different industries.
Right.
But they may be, we don't have budget right now. It's not the right time. It's too expensive, whatever it happens to be. Know those common objections, and then find a story that shows other people who had those common objections and how they overcame those objections. And if I can tell that story to you, and rather than saying, well, but it's really worth the cost and you're really going to be missing out, and I try to make the hard sell on you, that's going to breed resistance. But if I say, well, I understand that, I understand the objection that you're stating here. Let me share with you an example of this person I worked with. Gary, when he came to work with us, he had that same kind of situation. He was running up against the same problem that you're running up against, but he decided to do this and this to overcome that. And as a result, his business has grown this much. And I just want you to be able to have the same kind of success that Gary had. And now it hits them in a different way. Years ago, I was working with a sales team. I was teaching them about storytelling. And the objection that I got was, well, you can't expect us not to share features and benefits. And I said, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. But I had a little bit of resistance. Even as they left the room, there was a little bit of resistance there. 2 weeks later, I get an email from one of the sales professionals that was in the room. And she said, I just wanted to share this with you. I've been working with this potential client for months, trying to get them on board. And I had a call with them last week, and I remembered what you said, and I tried it. And I told them a story about the impact that this product has had on other businesses. And they hesitated on the other end of the line. And finally they said, you know what? Write me up a proposal. Let's see if we can get this thing to move forward. Just that I was stunned because they'd been so resistant up to that point, but it just opened the door another crack by telling them that story. So that was a great validation for me that she had stepped into this skill and tried it out and realized, yeah, there is a benefit in doing that. And it comes from the connection that we make with people as human beings.
Yeah. And today that becomes so crucial for us. It's always been important in business, but we've probably taken it to another level because just like there, we're not always doing business person to person in person anymore. It may be just like we're doing this podcast over Zoom, so we're able to see each other, but most people will be just listening it to audio, and they'll have that capability that's there. I think you kind of stepped into my next question I really wanted to ask, because I think what's happening is some business owners and entrepreneurs, okay, I kind of understand this storytelling thing. I get this a little bit, but I think the question they're going to say is, how do I get better at storytelling if it doesn't come natural? Because, well, Mark, you've just got a gift there. We can tell that already from the podcast, but I don't have that gift and I don't have that experiences. So how can I be able to craft good stories and be able to do that myself?
It's funny, Gary, you look at me and maybe your listeners are thinking the same thing. Oh, this guy just has a gift for storytelling. But that's not true. It's a skill like any other skill. And I had an interest in it. And so I developed that. But I want to put this back to you. I want to make this little conversation here, Gary.
Sure. I
want you to think about a skill that you currently have that you didn't have previously. And I'll even suggest one: hosting a podcast.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that because
okay, good.
I'm 270 some or 280 in now, and those first ones, if I go back,
that's what I was going to ask you. Is there a difference between podcasts 1 through 10 and where you are right now?
Major change.
And how did you make that change?
Just continue to do it. Continue to practice.
And now you've just answered the question.
Yeah.
It's really about learning the skill, getting some coaching. You probably listened to other people. You probably got feedback from other people as you were starting your podcast, and adjusting with that and keep doing it and keep trying. And it's like any other skill, you will build it over time, but you'll never build it by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get in the game. You've got to try it. And so we teach a structure, a very simple structure and formula for taking real life experiences and putting them into stories that can teach, lead, sell, and inspire. But you got to do it to start getting the benefit. We also give in the book some tips on practice and how to get feedback and how to get better on this. But I'll tell you, some of the best feedback that I get on the stories that I tell is just from watching the people I'm telling the story to.
Yeah.
And seeing it land with them or seeing it miss. And then I go, ooh, that point wasn't very clear. And then I can adjust based on that. So learn a structure, get some coaching, practice, get feedback. That's the way you basically learn any skill. And it's the same thing with storytelling.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And there's one thing I recommend to anyone, if you want to get better at the skill, you've given a toolbox that's available. Number one, just by the book. And then if you want more, I'm sure there's other opportunities, and we'll talk about those a little bit later, that's available to you. But the thing is, it's about reading. And that's what I was telling a group of leaders that I was with recently. If we want to get better at something, we've just got to continue to do it. Consistency makes the difference each and every time. So let's go a little different route with that, as we talked about how you can get good at it and stuff. What are some of the, would you say, the three biggest mistakes people make when they start telling stories?
You know, I think overarching all of the mistakes I see people make in telling these types of stories, and I'm not talking about in creating an epic novel or a movie or something like that, but I'm talking about these business stories that are 2-3 minutes long. One of the overarching mistakes I see is they aren't clear on what their purpose is in telling the story. And so if I'm not clear on this is the point that I'm trying to make with this story, I'll make a couple of the big mistakes. Number one, I'll just kind of rush through it and I'll just tell it as an experience. And then people will go, yeah, so what? Or I'll wander around through the story looking for my point. And this is what I call not landing the plane. It's like, if I don't know what my destination is, I'm going to fly around up there looking for a destination to get to. And it may or may not end up being the place that I actually want to go. So there's the overarching tip to avoid those two problems, is be really clear on what your purpose is in telling the story. What's your destination? The other one that I see is they aren't cognizant of their audience. Because the story, it's funny, we tell our story, especially small business owners will look at, well, I got to tell my founder story. We hear that a lot. Tell the founder story. And they think, well, that founder story is all about me and the journey that I went on, but it's not about you. You're not telling that story to be about you. You're telling that story to be about your customer, your employees. And so you need to put that in the context that's important for them. So know who you're speaking to and be able to couch your story in a way that has the impact on them that you want to get to that intention of why you're telling that story.
Yeah, that is huge. I think really, because that puts them in your shoes. You know, if you tell it only from your standpoint, they can't get in your shoes. And when they feel like, oh, I've had that challenge, I'm experiencing that challenge right now, then that makes a difference.
If I can throw this in here, I had an interesting experience this week. I was teaching in the Master Storytelling Workshop, and I told a story, and I got to the end of it. This person said, oh my gosh, when you said this, I felt like I was standing right next to you in that moment. That's what we want for our listeners. We want the listeners to really have a vicarious experience where my experience now becomes your experience as you're standing there beside me and relating to that. And if you aren't connected to who your audience is, it's really hard to bring them next to you in that story.
Yeah, that's so true. One thing I want to make sure we talk about, because I'm afraid that sometimes business owners and entrepreneurs think, well, I don't really have any stories to tell. And I'm sure it doesn't matter if it's just business owner entrepreneurs. When you work with other people, probably the same thing. My life's pretty ordinary. I've just started this little bitty business and things of that nature, and they don't think it's unique enough to be able to tell that story. So can you kind of dispel that myth for us?
Yeah. And I'll start with this little phrase that I use all the time. The extraordinary lives inside the ordinary. It's these ordinary everyday things that happen to us that have the greatest impact, because that's basically what everybody else is living too. I think there's a little bit of locational bias, a proximity bias in that, because it's like I experienced it, so it can't be that big of a deal. I mean, I remember several years ago, I'd look at people who had written books and think, man, they are so cool. They've written a book. Well, now that I've written a book, it's like, yeah, it's not that big a deal because I've done it, right? So there's a little bit of that bias that we have to get over. But think about this. Any experience you have that you have an emotional reaction to, and it doesn't matter what the emotion is. It can be fear, it can be anger, it can be joy, it can be exhilaration. You have some kind of an emotional reaction to a situation, there is likely a story embedded in it. There is likely an experience there that you can share that teaches an important lesson. If I can give a quick example, I was working in my garden. I was putting some paving stones, some pavers into the garden, just as a little walking path to be able to weed it and harvest and things like that. Well, I was taking the pavers out of the back of my car and I pinched my middle finger between two of those pavers, right on that soft spot that's at the end of the tip of your finger, where all the nerve endings are there. And oh, that hurt. Oh, I just, the pain of that moment. And when I told my wife about it, the first thing she said was, "Did you swear?" And I said, "No, I actually showed some restraint. I did not. I was all alone." But I was just like, oh. And I was looking back on that moment and said, there's an emotional reaction. What's the lesson? And as I thought about it, there is a lesson in there. That sometimes these really painful things happen to us in business. And if we focus on those, we stop moving forward. I could have at that moment said, I'm not finishing the garden today. But I didn't. I kind of felt the pain of it, walked it off a little bit, and then went back to what I was doing. But we need to do that in business too. We're going to hit those painful moments. Then in the moment, it feels like that is so painful, I'm not sure I can go on. But keep the perspective of how big is that really, get through that, and then you're going to get to your goals and you're going to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Now, that's a silly little simple thing, but there's a lesson embedded in that story or in that experience. And so look for those moments and capture them when you have an emotional reaction. The other thing I'll say is you're not restricted to your own experiences. Ask other people. If you're on a sales team and you're looking for what's a good story to help overcome this objection, well, ask your other sales associates, even in other companies, what are some stories that help you overcome that objection, or where somebody did overcome that objection? Borrow from other people. That's perfectly fine. But the stories are out there if you're looking for them and just paying attention.
Well, folks, I hope you saw what Mark just did there. He shared a story and shared that story, and we all felt that emotion. I mean, so that's why we call him the master storytelling, because number one, he wrote the book, but also because he does it. So once you realize it's something, it's a skill like we talked about in the very beginning that you can learn. But think about that was a small, really thing that happened. And he shared as a story that emotionally that we connect it with, to realize there's small things that happen in our life that we could share those same stories. So Mark, I congratulate you on that. And thank you for sharing it that way, because I think
I'm trying to live what I teach.
Exactly. He does what he said. Well, I want you all to know, before I let him go, we're going to ask one more question that's here, but his website is master-storytelling.com. We'll have it on our show notes. So if you're running or exercising right now or doing something active, we'll have that available for you. Also, Mark's willing to give us a free copy of the ebook that's available, and it's master-storytelling.com/podcast gift. And we will have that in show notes too. So if you'd like to get the ebook, it's available to you, and want you to know that he was gracious enough to give us that capability. And I thank you for that, Mark, that you're doing that for our listeners. Now, before I let you go, I ask every guest this final question, and it's really, what's your best business advice or tip that you would give to entrepreneurs and business owners?
Well, probably not going to be a surprise to your audience at this point, but my tip is your stories matter. Don't discount the things that happen to you and the ability that they have, the capability that they have of becoming powerful stories to teach, lead, sell, and inspire. And the more you use this skill, the more you're going to be able to connect with people internally and externally with your organization to help you achieve your business results.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a great one to think about. Now, remember, his website is master-storytelling.com. We'll have it in show notes, and that free ebook, if you want to get a copy of that, it's master-storytelling.com/podcast gift. Again, remember, it's in show notes, or if not, you can go to our website, smallbusinessanswerman.biz, and it will be on there. Mark is also on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. So if you'd like to connect with him, please connect with him, because that's what he loves doing, is he's sharing his passion, purpose, just like business owners, that you're making widgets or whatever you're doing in your business, you have that same passion for. And the book, I look forward to reading it. I have not got to it yet, Mark, but I plan on picking it up because I love storytelling and learning from that. So I look forward to reading it, but can't thank you enough for joining us today on the podcast.
Thanks, Gary. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and love talking about this, and particularly with small business owners, because this is a place where you can really stand out, where you can really make an impact.
Well, listeners, I want to give you this. I want you to think about this. You're a business owner, entrepreneur. Here's my action item for you. Write down 5 things that you could have your story about. You know, what could that be? Maybe it's something, how you got started in your business. Maybe it's why you're doing your business. Maybe it's because you did this business because it gave you the opportunity to walk away from something else. You decide what those are. But I would tell you right now, before you leave, write down 5 stories that you could craft and tell. And you could use it in an employee situation that we talked about, or you could use it in a selling situation. And there's multiple others too that you could do. You can use it on social media. People will watch that, especially if you get them emotionally involved. So you decide what it is, but let's write those 5 stories. And you don't have to write the whole 5 stories yet. Just write down what the story would be. So then you've got to make an action item and tell yourself over the next 5 weeks, you're going to try to use one of them each week as you practice the skill and use it. And then you can get better at it. And then, of course, order Mark's book, and you'll even get better at it as you process through. So thanks for joining us again this week for another great podcast. And we will be back next week. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.